The word canon, C-A-N-O-N, not to be confused with C-A-N-N-O-N. The word canon, C-A-N-O-N, implies some kind of a standard, a rule. It has come from the original Greek root canon, K-A-N-O-N, which also implies rule or standard. So for last 20 years or so, it has become a very important constituent of literary studies. In that, we see what was or what were called or known as the great texts of traditional literature are being called canonical. The preferred term that was used earlier was classical. Now, classical or great books, this kind of terms have been replaced with canonical. For example, we can say that Shakespeare is a canonical author of English literature, or in fact, the most canonical, or Charles Dickens, uh, Dr. Johnson, these are all canonical authors, but not so, say, Sidney Sheldon or even Arthur Conan Doyle, right? Not even Chetan Bhagat. So they come in the domain of popular or even pulp fiction. So there is a distinction between what we perceive to be canonical and what we perceive to be popular. So canonical has come from the uh, church roots, basically Greek roots, but at the same time they were more used in the world of, or they are more used in the world of churches. Canon or canonical meaning belonging or related to what is thought to be authentic within the church corpus. Or, for example, when a saint, when a person or priest, deceased priest, is declared to be a saint, that is known as canonization. So, giving a great status of sainthood. That means you are authenticating somebody as great. Same with literature. Uh, in English literature, the canonization of Shakespeare may be said to have started with Ben Jonson, who said after the death of Shakespeare in a poem that a good poet is made as well as born, and such wert thou. That is, a true poet or a very good or a great poet, we can say, has to be great by birth as well as great by training. Training maybe is personal, because there was a debate, where does greatness lie? Whether it is by birth or it is acquired. As you will see in Facebook or social media, this kind of quotes like genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, whatever. So you have to work hard. So again, some would say that no, how much soever you work hard, if you don't have the uh, thing within you from birth inherited, genetically or whichever way, you cannot go beyond a point. You can train someone to write verses, but you cannot train someone to uh, become a good poet like Shakespeare or Wordsworth for that matter. So art or nature, that was the Renaissance debate. Nature is what is given to us, and art is what we make by improvement. We know later, it's a little digression but important, that the neoclassical, for example, emphasized on art, that learning is more important. It was said, true ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who have learned to dance. But romantics, on the other hand, emphasized on the inner abilities more than formal art. So these debates were on which one is superior, inner gift or outer training. Anyway, Ben Jonson had long back said that both are necessary, and Shakespeare had both in perfect combination. So Shakespeare in a way remains the center of, or we can say remained, English literature for a long time. Now What are the values that this literature or literary texts, whom we call canonical texts, represent? So they are ideas of beauty, everlasting beauty, like it says, beauty is true, truth is beauty, or universal human predicament. From Shakespeare, we get things like frailty, thy name is woman, Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question, again, Hamlet, or as flies to wanton boys are we to the gods, they kill us for their sport. In King Lear, this kind of universal wisdom, which are applicable to all people of all times, of all places. That is how, or that is why they are great. This is the idea behind canon. So, though the term canon as a literary critical term has come to the forefront in recent years, the concept of, as I have said, a great literature, good book, or great book had always been there. Ben Jonson started it. Anyway, Dryden also spoke about it repeatedly, but especially in his an essay on dramatic poesy. Then Samuel Johnson's The Lives of the English Poets and his preface to Shakespeare were two very important instances of what we with hindsight can call canon formation. For example, I remember in his preface to Shakespeare, he has given pointers like this, that nothing pleases and pleases for long, but just representation of general nature. The just means proper. So proper representation of general nature, not particular nature. For Dr. Johnson, all the characters of Shakespeare represented types, not particular persons, which is not what we think about Shakespeare. But anyway, or he said, for example, the number of years that should be counted as decisive to decide on a person's greatness is 100. Dr. Johnson says in preface to Shakespeare that for 100 years a person must have enjoyed the popularity of audience. So these are the signs, pointers. So the link is, I think, clear. From Ben Jonson we have come to Dryden, then Dr. Samuel Johnson, who is most important. I would like to add that he not only canonized English literature with his lives of the poets and preface to Shakespeare, but in a way gave, canonized English language also, standardized. His is not the first dictionary, but definitely the first most important dictionary of English language, Dr. Johnson wrote. Then the next major figure is Matthew Arnold, who specifically in his study of poetry, as it were, that essay which most of you have read, had almost predicted that literature will replace religion. He said poetry, but by extension we can understand literature. And he also identified people like Shakespeare, Dante, Homer as great writers. And to decide if a new writer is great or not, their writings have to be compared with some selected great selected passages from those established writers like Homer, Virgil. This is what Arnold called the touchstone method. Now, after Arnold, there are further developments which we'll discuss in another video, because the network is so bad and it's already 10 minutes here. If I speak more, it will take 6 to 7 hours to upload. So in part 2, I will talk about especially F.R. Lewis as the successor of Arnold and as the person who has had the single most important contribution in making English departments a consolidated structure of academic exercise. Though we are moving away from Lewis after the advent of theory and all that, but still it is because Lewis is there that we can move away from him. So his importance is paramount. Also, in my next lecture, I will offer criticisms or critiques or opposition to the idea of canon as great texts which are universally applicable to all places and all human beings, which I have tried to highlight here. I mean, the kind of definition of the canon that I have tried to bring to the fore in this lecture, its criticism will be dealt with in my next lecture after I speak about Lewis. Hope you find it interesting. Have a good day.